From the Delhi studios of Republic TV, it's time for the debate.
The debate at 10. Powered by Reva University, Quick Heal Secrite, Green Lamb Laminates, PolicyBazaar.com. Co-powered by Mankind Pharma.
Ladies and gentlemen, once known as the shark of the startup world, Ashneer Grover now finds himself at the center of a fraud case. He's been stopped from going out of the country due to a lookout circular that is issued by the Delhi police following an investigation that has been carried out. Now, what are the charges that have been faced by Ashneer Grover, and what does this essentially mean? Who is against a man who is largely seen as the poster boy of startup India? The responses that have essentially come in from Mr. Grover does not really add up to the charges that have been leveled against him and his family members. It is yet another corporate scam that India witnesses. Here is what we know about the case, and then we begin the debate.
Shark Tank India co-host and businessman Ashneer Grover, along with his wife Madhuri, was stopped from leaving India for New York at Delhi airport late last night. The husband and wife duo was stopped at the airport over a lookout circular issued against them by the Delhi Police's Economic Offences Wing. The circular was issued earlier this week by the agency as it is probing an alleged fraud at BharatPe, a fintech firm co-founded by Ashneer Grover. The Economic Offences Wing filed a complaint against Grover claiming that he has caused a loss of over 81 crore rupees.
A criminal suit was filed by BharatPe against former MD Ashneer Grover and his wife Madhuri Jain Grover on 17 counts, including embezzlement, forgery, criminal breach of trust and dubious transactions. And the huge sum of money was siphoned off from fintech unicorn into the fake recruitment firms, which were directly linked with the family members of Madhuri Jain Grover.
A report filed by the police in court also names Grover's wife in this case and accuses the duo of undue and bulky payments to 8 bogus firms linked to them.
Technologies, the company that promotes BharatPe, as of now filed a complaint against him and his wife to Delhi police on 11th of May. Now, the Delhi police has also filed a status report in the Delhi High Court in which it has made grave allegations of how Ashneer Grover may be involved in apparently and reportedly swindling large amounts of money from the investment that was done in BharatPe by several firms.
Grover has posted on social media that he hadn't been served a notice since the case was filed until he left for the airport. Grover also added in the social media post that the notice was delivered to his house this morning and that he will coordinate with the police. Is Ashneer Grover at the center of an over 70 crore rupees embezzlement case? Let's debate.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a status report that has been filed before the Delhi High Court by the Delhi Police's Economic Offences Wing, the agency that is looking into the charges that have been levelled against the co-founder of BharatPe. Before I begin the debate, just to put out some of the details of the charges that have been levelled, this is what the Delhi Police claims in the status report that has been filed before the court. They say that fake invoices were largely created at a later stage after the opening of the bank accounts of these firms, and there are about 8 firms that have basically come under the scanner. They say that the firms were established and their bank accounts were opened only for the purpose of siphoning of funds and for causing wrongful gain to the alleged person. The alleged person here happens to be Mr. Grover and his family members. two key issues that you're essentially looking at. One, with regards to fake recruitment that takes place, and also the GST violation. Both are issues that Ashneer Grover hasn't really responded as yet. In fact, at the start of the debate, let me also tell our viewers that we've reached out to Mr. Grover. So far, there has been no response. In fact, we've also spoken to the legal team. No response as yet. We are hoping that as the program is on, Mr. Grover, who may be watching this program, we are open to having him on the debate tonight. But in the absence of Mr. Grover, we have Manavendra Mishra, he's the partner Khaitan, joining us on the debate tonight. Along with him is Ajay Dua, former Commerce Secretary, Government of India, senior economist, and Kanishk Gaur, founder, India Future Foundation and cybersecurity expert. And Sharat Chandra is going to join us in a short while from now. Let me begin by asking you, Mr. Mishra, to put this into perspective. Let's look at what the legal team of Mr. Grover had to argue in the Delhi High Court. They say that the FIR that was registered by the Delhi Police Economic Offences Wing do not disclose any criminality, number one. Number two, they say that nurturing of the company from a small venture to a valuation about 20,000 crore rupees in 2023 is essentially good enough for quashing the FIR, which again wasn't something that the Delhi High Court was really satisfied with. I'm not too sure, Mr. Mishra, if you've been able to perhaps glance through that status report, which largely looks into all the allegations. But how would you really respond to some of the legal aspects that have been brought to fore by the legal team of Ashneer Grover?
I think what's very important to understand in this situation is that quashing is not something which is very easily granted. It's not something that happens for the asking. Given the amounts involved and given the fact that I've not actually seen the status report, but I've seen an article which sort of delved onto it. And what is prima facie coming out is that some sort of issues are made out. In which particular situation, let's be very clear that it's the ingredient of each offense which has to be meted out, that they are not made out in this particular scenario for the High Court to give a quashing order. If I heard you right, there's already been a hearing in the matter, and there is no relief as such or quashing or interim protection as such, which has been granted in the said hearing. So what would be important at this point of time is how do they really go about challenging this lookout circular, which obviously seems to have come out as a result of the EOW proceedings that are going on. The second point with regards to whether setting up a company is a ground enough for quashing, I think at least in our experience, the courts have been very clear on these issues where they go and look at the allegations, they look at whether an offense is made out and whether there's a prima facie case for the High Court to get involved in the quashing, or would they rather let the trial court form the charge sheet and go for a discharge? I mean, that would be something for the court to really take a call on. And as far as interlinking the lookout circular to the EOW case is concerned, what's crucial here to appreciate is that as long as there's an FIR, the police does have a right to take out a lookout circular. Yes, there's been a lot of debate as to the procedure, how to go about it. But I think the law is quite clear. So Mayor Singh Sarkar has made it very clear that there is a procedure you have to follow. You have to either go back to the authority which issued the lookout circular, or you have to go to the High Court and seek a quashing of the lookout circular or interim travel permission, in which there will be substantial security and other conditions imposed on you. So yeah, I think at this point of time, it's important not to look at other LOC in isolation, but to be read with what the EOW has said in the status report.
Mr. Dua, we are talking about a flamboyant businessman who largely wore his success on his sleeve. Nothing wrong really in it. But let's look at the finer details of the investigation that has really come up. The claims that have been made by the Delhi police at this point in time. Yet it remains to be seen whether at all it's going to stand the scrutiny of the court or not. But purely looking at the allegations that have been leveled and the response that has come in from Ashneer Grover, because in my research, I haven't really seen much of a detailed point-by-point rebuttal really coming in by Mr. Grover at this point in time, but simply going by what his legal team says. and I'm quoting the argument that has been made before the court. They say that no instance of fraud were reported by the company's statutory auditor. And they say that this is mala fide. There is no reason why the investigation should be permitted to go on. These are some of the responses that have been made, or the arguments that have been made by Mr. Grover in the court. How do you really look at the current situation with the status report now coming out in the public?
Who have you addressed this question to, please?
Mr. Dua, that question was for you. Mr. Dua, that question was for you.
Right. Thank you for having me on this discussion. I think the police, in what it has done, the EOW of the police, is probably as per the procedure laid down. They did have an FIR. They looked at it. They are probably investigating it. That's how they have filed a status report in the High Court. And now it is up to the court to be convinced that the police has overreached, and in overreach by stopping him from traveling, him and his wife traveling overseas. Now, as a normal procedure, if an inquiry is going on, the police is well within its right to stop a person against whom, or persons against whom there is an allegation under different sections, and one or two important ones: embezzlement, non-payment of GST, as you pointed out. Those and can make the police issue the stop notice from travel, lookout notice for against travel. And this has to be seen in the light of the fact that many fugitives, people who had cases going on against them, even of a much larger order, they managed to leave the shores of the country. And it's been very difficult for the country's investigation agencies, prosecuting agencies, to get them back, to take them to task. Task before being task in the sense, I'm not saying anybody is guilty till it's proven and convincingly proven in a court of law, but even to stand trial, it's become very difficult. So I think, as a matter of abundant caution, the police has taken this action, and that this action of the police is not in any way, I would say, illegal. It is the police is well within its right. And now, all right, he's inconvenienced, he and his wife, they can't travel, but they would need to cooperate as and when called for by the police. And that means they have to be around in the country as the investigation process proceeds, to cooperate with the police and let the trial, let the matter reach, make some more progress. That there has been progress is apparent from the fact that there is a status report, and the High Court has not granted any relief in the matter. It is rather unusual, though, as was very rightly pointed out earlier.
Mr. Dua,
that in the very first hearing, the High Court will give the relief, which has
Mr. Dua, I don't think so.
Without hearing the police.
Mr. Dua, I don't think so. There is any debate. Mr. Dua, I don't think so. There is any debate when it comes to following the procedure here. As far as the lookout circular is concerned, any investigative agency in the process of their investigation would have actually issued the lookout circular. On various other cases, for instance, I've highlighted this in the past too, the mistakes that have been made by a few agencies in the past. For instance, the Mahadev app case, remember the lookout circular was not even issued by the investigative agency, in particular the Chhattisgarh police, resulting in the main accused really leaving. So there is no debate on that aspect. I would like to perhaps, look at the allegations that have been leveled against Ashneer Grover. a man who's been seen as the poster boy of India's startup, and hence I want to bring you, Kanishk Gorg, into this picture right now. Look at the allegations that he faces at this point in time in terms of falsification and, more importantly, GST violations that have taken place, puts the company in a complete embarrassment. Perhaps BharatPe at some point in time after the audit that was essentially done realized what was actually going wrong. Do you think this basically damages that entire image of Startup India?
I don't think so. This damages the image of Startup India. Mr. Ashneer Grover has gone and started another startup called as the third startup, which he's working primarily in the space of gaming. He has been creating jobs in this country. He had fallen on bad blood with his investors, and that story has been on, and that's where he has made certain allegations against the board. The people who are part of the leadership team at BharatPe, they have also made certain allegations. Now, none of these allegations have been proved. Mr. Ashneer Grover is also a serial investor. He was there as a judge on Shark Tank. He continues to do angel investments. He has traveled to US and other countries at least 4 times before this. Now, this is a particular way I see he's being harassed, because the summon was not received by him. It was when he was traveling abroad, he was stopped and then told that there is a summon issued to you and you need to stay back. Had he known, he would have definitely cooperated with the agencies. He is not a serial offender. And comparing him to the founders
Mr.
of
Gaur,
Mahadev,
Mr. Gaur,
I think that's
believe
equally wrong.
Manavendra Mishra.
You have ED notices against those people. You have ED. Let me finish. You have ED notices against those people, and these people have been evading. Mr. Ashneer Grover is there in this country. He is willing to cooperate with the law enforcement agencies, right? He has got a big team who is supporting him, and there are enough people who have seen how he has been behaving, right? The only thing is he's been very, very vocal against certain issues. He's also written a book, but there is no way to judge him and say that, he's trying to evade arrest or he's trying to abscond.
The question here is not about judging. Mr. Gaur, the question here is not about judging. Perhaps Mr. Manavendra Mishra would also bear me out on this entire matter. The question here is this, and Mr. Gaur, somewhere down the line you've got it slightly wrong in terms of facts, and let me correct that. Manavendra Mishra, you can also come into the picture. And that is, as far as the summons, or rather technically they are not really summons here, it is pretty much a protocol that is followed, especially for those against whom the lookout circular is issued, and it turns out that the attempt has been made to leave the country. It is an explanation that they would be providing before the Delhi Police Economic Offences Wing. So technically it's not really a summon per se. But having said that, the reason why it has come now and not in the month of May, because as I understand from my sources within the Delhi Police Economic Offences Wing, is primarily because the investigation reaches at some point, at some stage, and that is the reason why a status report is filed, and thereafter the lookout circular is issued, pretty much what is essentially done. Manavendra Mishra, is there a problem with it? Because I would largely not really focus on the matter that he has to come and explain himself on the very fact that he was leaving the country. That's not the issue here. The issue is largely some of the allegations that he faces at this point in time. Can this be dubbed as harassment, as Mr. Gaur is pointing out? Because clearly, if I look at this status report, it largely talks about 8 firms. At least what I could count is at least 6 firms where directly or indirectly Mr. Grover and his family have been named. So prima facie, do you believe that there is a case that stands out?
Look, let's be very clear on the procedural part. I think that's important to understand and appreciate, because there's been a lot of, I would say, different opinions about this whole lookout circular thing. Lookout circular is purely the prerogative of the investigation agency. The investigation agency in this case is EOW. There is no provision in the 2021 master guidance which sort of regulates lookout circular that a copy of it has to be served on the person, although there are multiple cases where parties have sort of raised it as an issue. What happens is when you have a lookout circular at the immigration is where you are stopped and you're taken to like the small room which is just behind. And from there, more often than not, you are asked to go straight to the police station, or the investigation agency, whoever has taken it out, is asked to come and sort of pick you up from there. In this case, what I believe has happened is that they were asked to go back home, and on the next day, a summons to appear has been given to them. Now, this summons is your regular Section 160 CRPC summons to come and participate or join the investigation. This summons is not a copy of the lookout circular as such. Coming back to the timing of it, whether this is harassment, it's not easy. See, whilst lookout circulars have been in the news for a while, it's not a straightforward job to get a lookout circular. There's a form, there are details, there are particular thresholds which have to be met out. All of this has to be submitted, and only after that it sort of gets approved. So in this particular case, it's very likely, and I believe that the intelligence suggests such, it is that when he was traveling in the first instance, there was no lookout circular. It's only in the recent times, given whatever additional material that would have come in the hands of the investigation agency, that they could have made out a case of a lookout circular in this particular case. And I think as far as procedure is concerned, there's a procedure to set it aside. There's a procedure to get travel permission. Travel permissions are being granted by the court with certain conditions which have to be met out. So I think what's important is to really look at whether there was any illegality as such, which doesn't seem to be the case at this point of time. Now, this is purely on the lookout circular bit. I'm not commenting on the merits of the matter because, again, look, it's the subject matter of a trial. I think everyone here is equivocal in saying that we are not the people who can judge. The job of the EOW is to put the facts on record, which we believe it has done. It's the job of the defense attorneys of Mr. Grover to prove them wrong. If they make out a case, the courts will quash it. If they don't make out a case, it goes into trial. And it's only at the end of the trial that you can really put a bullseye on someone, and not before that.
Okay. Sharath, I think so we've pretty much taken care of this entire controversy surrounding the lookout circular and what Ashneer Grover is essentially dubbing this as complete drama. And perhaps, Mr. God, you've got the perspective on this. Sharath, if I can bring you into the debate on the allegations, purely on the allegations that have been leveled against Ashneer Grover. And if I have to go through the status report, this largely talks about the HR firms that have been linked somewhere down the line to Mr. Grover and his family members. Then it largely talks about the GST violation too, which again is another issue that we have not really heard anything from Mr. Ashneer Grover. And that is concerning because here they say that the Director General of the GST has already replied saying that fake non-existing vendor firms had raised invoices to the complainant company, which is BharatPe, received payments from the complainant company, that is BharatPe once again. And they say the alleged persons here, that is Ashneer Grover and others, submitted their response before the DGGI, wherein they had accepted the finding that some of these vendors are non-existent. So there is an acceptance that has been made by Mr. Grover before the agency here, that look here, these were fake vendors.
Right. In fact, I would like to start by commenting on a very disturbing and unhealthy trend which has crept in the startup ecosystem. And this is not one case. So there's another case where InfoEdge has filed complaint against Rahul Yadav, one of the PropTech founder, and the amount is close to 288 crores. So this is a very disturbing trend, and it brings a lot of disrepute to the world's third largest fintech and startup ecosystem, right? And McKinsey says that by 2030, the total revenue which fintech ecosystem can bring can go as high as $70 billion. So I think this is the right time. We have to set the right standards, and we should idolize the right entrepreneurs, right? And this is where a lot is incumbent upon all startup founders to set high benchmarks with respect to corporate governance. And this is a classical case of misgovernance, right? So startup misgovernance and a lot of financial irregularities, how they have managed to creep into the ecosystem. We also have to have a deep look in this matter and work towards how we can make the ecosystem more transparent and more inclusive for all startup founders.
Mr. Dua, would you agree with what Sharath Chandra is saying, that perhaps this is the classic case of misgovernance too, And of course, there is a corporate rivalry that comes into the picture. I'm not getting into it because that's not the subject matter of our debate. But as Sharath is also pointing out, do you believe this is a case, Mr. Dua, of also misgovernance?
Prima facie, there is. That, whether it's substantive, it can stand the test of investigation, and subsequently, of course, of the trial, time alone will tell us. So unless there are serious allegations made, the police would not have done what it did, that is, issue the lookout notice and subsequently send him summons. So on the face of it, it does appear to be a case of misgovernance, particularly when a couple of things which are, I think, to my mind, little somewhat damaging against him. One is that the payments to be made to recruitment companies which have opened up their bank accounts subsequent to the dates of making the payments. So prima facie it appears. I'm using the word prima facie repeatedly just to mention that it's nothing established. Establishment is in a court of law, but when the police from the allegation turns it into a charge sheet, then it means the police is convinced about it, and that will be at the end of its inquiry. That's not yet happened. So once you, on the face of it, you have such serious allegations, and the fact that this has happened seems to have been also admitted before the GST authorities, it does lend credence to the allegations against him. And I would say that there is no harm for the two accused persons to cooperate. Let this inquiry be completed as early as possible. And if they have a credible story, I'm sure the police would have no reason not to believe them, particularly if they can also cite, police can get evidence to support saying that it is, if there is a mistake, it's inadvertent, and that for inadvertency, the charges are civil in nature, damages to be paid, penalties to be paid, etc. But if it is deliberately, right, there is malfeasance, which is deliberate, I think then it's a criminal case, and that the police would have to decide as they move on.
Well, in fact, Kanishkar, at the start of the debate, I've already said these are allegations that have been leveled. Whether it stands as scrutiny of the court or not, we'll have to wait and watch. But simply going by what they claim in the status report, because they say that this is what they found out from the investigation. Clearly, they talk about the fact that roughly about 7.6 crore rupees was found credited in firms that have been linked to Ashneer Grover. And the very fact that these are backdated accounts or the transactions that have taken place, it does, as they say, there is a smoking gun here. And that's the reason why questions are essentially being asked, which has been largely ducked so far by Mr. Grover. That perhaps cannot really be dubbed as harassment.
See, all of this happened post Mr. Ashneer Grover's fallout. All of this has happened post Mr. Ashneer Grover's fallout with his investors and also with the leadership of BharatPe. None of this came to notice during the statutory audit or any of the other exercises which could be internal audit which were carried out. Once there is bad blood, there are going to be allegations. None of these allegations have been proved so far. So for us to blame Mr. Ashneer Grover as a serial offender or somebody moving money, I think we are going too far. Let the investigation report come to an outcome. Then let's take a call whether Mr. Ashneer Grover is an offender or not. When you are running a business by yourself and you take it to a certain stage and then you have investors coming in, you have to build out processes for good governance, for ensuring structured way of operating. I think that is a change management exercise for any entrepreneur. Mr. Ashneer Grover unfortunately could not build that right kind of reputation and trust with his investors. That's why he is where he is today. But that doesn't mean that we start basically calling him as an offender or labeling him and telling him that he is being embezzling money. He, after coming out of BharatPe, has done another startup today, right? He is not a person who is living a lavish life or he is using that money. He has started another startup. He's investing in multiple startups. He's going and mentoring so many entrepreneurs. If you look at Mr. Ashneer Grover's social media coverage, you will find out that he has gone and spoken at so many places, speaking to entrepreneurs. He's right. So he's a person who speaks by his heart.
I don't think so.
Who puts his perspective across.
Mr. Gore, I don't think so. No one is
just putting out and saying that there is police notice.
Now,
there is.
Mr. Gore,
no,
unlike Mr. Grover, who has scant regard,
he was trying to run away.
Unlike Mr. Gore, unlike Mr. Gore, unlike Mr. Grover, who has scant regard for the media, or for that matter, scant regard for journalists who raise questions. I think so. Every journalist is entitled to ask these questions, especially if there are some grave charges. But let me also make this very clear: no one is pronouncing him guilty. We are just talking about the very investigation, the complaint that has been registered. One final word that I want to get in from Manavendra Mishra at this point in time. Manavendra, you've not spoken much about the merits of the case. Of course, we're not getting into the merits of the case right now. We're simply looking at the allegations. Sharat Chandra says that it basically perhaps brings in some amount of disrepute, especially given the fact that we've largely spoken about the ecosystem in our country as far as fintech is concerned. Simply looking at these allegations, do you also somewhere down the line believe that yes, it brings in that disrepute which we do not want at this point in time, at the beginning of the curve?
Look, fintech as a sector has been booming. It's not like it has not had its fair share of challenges. We have seen the Chinese loan app cases. We have seen a crackdown on gaming. We have seen a crackdown on payment gateways. The enforcement directorate has been very busy with regulating the sector. There are FEMA cases today. There are money laundering and all sorts of cases which are prevalent in the sector. So I think when Sharat says that, look, it's a sector which is booming and which does not need this kind of disrepute at this point of time, I think he's quite right in the fact that it's a sector where the investors are coming in. There is very good job market. There's a particular sense of responsibility because you are dealing with other people's money. And hence, it's obviously a sector which needs a little higher level of governance as compared to what any other sector would be. And it's a regulated sector at the end of the day. The RBI has very strict norms. You have the Financial Intelligence Unit, which has put on strict norms on it. I think what's critical in the merits of this case, I would say the facts that are out at this point of time, is to try and understand that it's not as if every bad decision by every founder would result in the sector being put to disrepute. It's not a case like Kanishk mentioned that this has been happening on a serial manner. I think what's important is that a lot of these facts come into light much later. Statutory auditors are not forensic auditors. I think I've said it a lot of times before, but you cannot expect that the statutory auditor will know everything. They will report basis the information which the company has put forth to them. I think if these are findings of the economic offense wing, it's very likely the statutory auditor would not even be aware of the same. In that context, what's really key is to try and understand that this is a sector where, like Kanishk again said, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who have set it up with their blood, skin, toil. They've really put in effort on it. But you need to make sure that after a point of time, when you have grown to a particular size, everything is regulated, get some audits done, make sure that you are towing the line. It's your baby, but no one wants to raise a bad kid who ends up becoming a bully or sorts of goes down the line that no one really wants to hang out with. So if you want to raise your baby properly, it's your child. Once you reach a particular stage, once the teenagers are here, everyone becomes a disciplinarian. You have to do the same thing with your companies. Get your regulations in order. Get your GSTs in order. Get your company compliances in order. I mean, we are lucky that we are talking of EOW, which has 3 years for fraud. SFIO now says a minimum of 5 years when it comes to a fraud under Companies Act. So, these thresholds have increased. I think our country has seen a lot more prosecutions. We have reached a stage where we really can't look the other way. And that whole chalta hai attitude is not going to take us forward. So, yes, I think it's important that everyone in the sector, their advisors, people working with them, everyone sort of wakes up. We find the best way to make this work. And specifically on the allegations, look, ILFS and a lot of other matters have really put it on a lot of spotlight as to how things were going wrong in the past. And I think it's really an onus on the sector and the leaders in the sector to be thought leaders, to push through, push each other, and to ensure that they are doing what is the best possible means to be regulated and not trying 5 ways to evade the regulation, but to comply with them at the best. I think that would be my final word on this.
Well, thank you very much, Manavendra Mishra, Sharat, as well as Ajay Dua and Ganesh Kaur for joining us on the debate. And as far as Mr. Grover is concerned, hoping that he'll finally respond to the questions that have been sent out by Republic TV. And let's make this very clear. These are some grave charges that have been leveled against him, hoping to see that there would also be a version coming in from his side. That's all that we could pack. On the other side, the debate coming up. Let's take a quick 30-second Securite break and we'll be back with the final debate.